public ed is under attack. And how we've known it is looking very quickly like it's going to be an effort to dismantle. I think it'll break down before we were able to build it back up.
Big thanks to Practice Plan for allowing us to use their booth today. If you are needing revenue in quick and efficient manner, you need to reach out to Practice Plan. Easy, seamless facility rental. Thank you to John and the team for allowing us to be here. Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. We are here in Austin, Texas, TASA Midwinter 2025, brand new year, new excitement. First, out of the gate, a returning face and now a friend after our first interview, Zapata County Superintendent, Dr. Bobbie Trevino. Welcome.
Thank you. Love it. It's a great way to start the day.
Oh, well, I saw that you were first. I'm like, yes, let's get some energy and have some discussion. So how's the new year treating you and your students in Zapata County?
It's been really, it's been great. Obviously, love having the kids back. Challenge because, back home, we don't normally have weather issues. And it's been a little cold.
It has.
And so when it dips below, 40, everybody thinks we should have a delayed start. So
just 40, right? That's like the
yeah, like it's going to be too cold. We can't come to school early, so we had to deal with a little bit of that. But it's good.
So that snow day,
Yeah, that we definitely closed for that. We were expecting snow. All we got was ice and some, freeze.
And so you had some kids, everybody's like, they're too cold. They don't want to walk to school.
Yeah.
And as soon as you shut down school, kids out in the street, in the yard.
Playing. Well, and it's a funny thing, because if you live in a home that has heat, you want to have a snow day and keep your kids at home. But for our population, we talked about this the last time, with the high poverty, sometimes being at school is the warmer place for them. And they get 2 meals and, snacks and heating. And so I always think really carefully before I make my decision.
Yeah, so, because if you close, there's a lot of folks that don't get what they need on those days. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
now, I have to ask before we jump into the conversation, any New Year's resolutions that you would share?
I do that every year, but I didn't this year.
Why?
I don't know, because I never fulfill them. So I didn't want to set myself up for failure. I'm just like, I'm gonna live my best life, and I'm gonna make some good choices and just try to be, balance life and health, and try to avoid the nursing home. That's kind of where I'm at now. So just kind of take it easy and just embrace. Had a really rough 2024. My husband and I, lost our in-laws within 5 months of each other. And that's really tough. It really just makes you appreciate life. And so when problems come at you, you're like, nobody's going to steal my peace. That's really what I'm after.
Well, good for you. As we're here in Austin and legislative session is going on and we're all kind of holding our breath to see what comes out of that, it kind of brings me to our topic in terms of politics, leadership. How do you navigate some of those things? And I know recently you've got some new board members. So for all of the aspiring soups or even our sitting soups, how do you go about that transition and when there's change and there's, somebody may have a different point of view that's coming in to help, guide the district? What are your thoughts on some of those best practices?
Well, initially I can speak to, I've been at the central office level for 12 years now. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way before coming into the seat of superintendent, which is a completely different place to be than when you're an assistant sup. At the foundation of it all, it's about the relationships. Like with teaching with students and when you're leading a district and you're having to build relationships, that team of 8 really is critical. So when I was in the seat initially for the first 2.5 years, I had a board that had been very consistent. They had been there for a long time.
Right.
And they gave me a lot of autonomy, do your thing, And so I really had the best of, that world. In fact, when I talked to my colleagues, they were dealing with board issues. And I was like, I don't have that issue,
Right.
But then elections happen, and I had 5 up for re-election. We got 3 new members,
Mm-hmm.
and so that changes the dynamics because everybody kind of comes to the table with their own perception of what that role is like,
Right.
and they come with perceptions about what's happening in the district because constituents have talked to them.
Sure.
And so sometimes they come in guns a blazing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when you look at it, as superintendents, we can't get involved in the politics. And I remember Dr. Randall used to say, you don't play politics, but you need to know the politics,
Yes.
and you need to understand, where they fall. And so in order to be able to do that, you have to get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I do right out of the gate after the day after the elections is I call each member. I called each member and I said, let's schedule a 1-to-1. So, they didn't interview me. So they need to learn a little bit about me and what I've been doing in the district up until that point. And so I spent, a good hour to 2 hours with each one of the new members talking about here's who I am and here's what we've been doing. Tell me about you. Tell me about your concerns.
Sure.
What are you coming in with that's most pressing that you feel like this is something you want information on? So spend a lot of time doing that. Now, for me, it's a little bit unique because I grew up in that community.
So you know everybody.
So I know even though I'd been away for some time, I come back and I either went to school with them or, they were, either younger than me, went to school with my brothers, So there's a familiarity there, which can be both beneficial and not.
Right. Right.
So I spent a lot of time with them, kind of starting that, cultivating the relationship. The next thing that I did was making sure that we aligned what they were thinking to our district vision and mission, right? So, bringing out the strategic plan and just kind of going over this is where we are and
Mm-hmm.
this is what we've been working on. But I did this for the first time. I prepared a board orientation away from the team of 8 and legal. It was just a district-based orientation with my cabinet members and myself. And we went through what are your responsibilities, what are my responsibilities, and here's what each department is responsible for. So we spent about 5 hours together.
Wow.
Really diving in to and at that point dispelled many of their misconceptions.
Right.
Because some of their conversations like, oh, I didn't know that's the way that worked, or I didn't know that, because they had some preconceived
Yes.
ideas coming in. So, I think spending that time was very valuable because it set the tone for what we're going to deliver as a team and then how we are going to work, together.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask is there's so much that's probably said that, you don't have control of, right? You're trying to do the best that you can, the best work for kids. And then whatever's said on the periphery, you're not always aware of where it comes from and the intent of it. So I would imagine that just making sure any misconceptions
Yeah.
that they're coming in with is a priority. Like, understand the concern. Here's
Yeah.
the truth of
And
how
I
things
think
work.
that the important factor, and I mean, like, this is reality, right? And I think many superintendents might, can relate to that, and aspiring even as well. But, if you get into your head too much, you might start to feel like they're personal attacks.
Yeah.
They're coming at you with, and I'll give an example. We had a situation with, some questions around hiring policy and who should be the hiring entity. Should it be the superintendent? Should it be the board? And so they were really coming out with, no, we think the board needs to be the one hiring, from custodians all the way up.
Oh,
right?
wow. Okay.
And so initial thoughts, like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, you're undermining, it's an attack, you don't trust me, those are some of the thoughts that kind of go through your head. So you really have to step outside of that and go, okay, wait a minute. They're thinking this is the problem. I can't focus on the problem, I need to focus on their thinking. So what are they thinking? And I have to arrive at, like, what is it that they're thinking? What's the real issue that they're concerned about?
Okay.
And so when I got that mindset, then I was able to have conversation with them of, like, tell me what it is and really dig in. And then what we discovered was they were more concerned, certified teachers versus non-certified teachers, performance. Oh, performance. It's not that we have certified and non-certified because of DOI.
Right.
It's you're worried about performance and the support the teachers are getting. That's a different conversation. That has nothing to do with this policy. So when I redirected that thinking to this, then we were able to dialogue about the problem and come to the solution.
Gotcha.
Right? But you have to get out of your head. So I would say to superintendents, like, you know, if you get angry and you kind of go operate from this energy level of like, I'm a victim or I'm having to defend myself,
Yes.
then the communication breaks down. And so you have to really be aware of where you're operating from, because you're the bridge between what's happening in the district and the team of 8, right?
Mhm.
So as you're kind of like, you're wanting to protect the work and the people, and you know how hard everybody's working, and you've got this new group, because they're a new group now, they're a different team.
Right.
And they're kind of like asking questions that you could potentially feel like, I have to get defensive over this. You have to think about where are they coming from. And so you have to really get to know them to know where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's great advice, and something that I struggled with mightily, because you're right. Your initial reaction, it's visceral almost, where you're like,
it's like,
I'm up here,
dukes up.
I'm killing myself over here, and
how can they not see all the good that we're doing?
yes, I mean no one focuses on all the positive, and that's the thing that it's hard. It's hard to remove yourself from that.
Well, and I think the important thing also is that while you're also dealing with this, you're like, my energy, what I'm bringing, if I'm operating from this, like I'm having to fight, that feeds off to the people that I'm leading.
Yeah.
And that impacts them and their stability. And so then they start to worry about, and so like, we can't have that, right? So I have to be able to be in a mindset that says, okay, this is happening. I need to think about what they're thinking. Let me try to solve the problem this way. And then coming over here and saying, we're focusing on the work. Let's keep doing. I worry about this. You worry about how are we going to hit these kids.
Right. Yep.
One of the best things that happened was, we're going through this process and we're working through it. And it's, we're getting to a good place. We're learning how to dance.
Yeah.
It's a new dance partner, so we're learning how to dance. We had a big event coming out of the gate, January 18th, with our Parent Engagement Summit. They had never participated in it. It's the second year we do it. I had 400 parents show up.
Oh, wow.
And it was
a huge hit.
It was a huge hit, and they were floored at the turnout and the event itself, and just how the team got together to roll that out. So they walk away like, wow. Like, your team is really doing a lot of work. Yes, they are.
Yes.
So it's not enough for me to say it. I need to provide them with opportunities to show it so that they can see, yes, you're going to have people talking to you about, oh, this is terrible, and, teachers don't get support in it. But look at what's happening over here. This is the reality.
Yeah. What's your go-to, like, not necessarily for new board members, but just board relations or team building, or even just one-on-one time with board? What is is it at lunch? Is it you invite them over to eat? Like, what's your go-to?
Generally, I mean, I do a lot of phone conversations, because they're all professionals that, they're all, kind of working. Well, most of them are. So I do a lot of phone conversations. I offer to meet with them, wherever they want. They always choose to come to my office. So we sit in my office, which kind of works, because I have a whiteboard in my office where once my thoughts get centered, then I put it up on my board, and that becomes action items for my team.
Gotcha.
And so then I can always reference, like, here's where we are. This is what we're thinking. This is what we're working on. And it provides them with kind of a focal point also. But I'll have, some will call and say, hey, I need some time with you. Can you call me? And so, I'll be driving from point A to point and on the phone, with, an hour-long conversation, and, answer their questions, set them at ease, and kind of get them back centered again. But that was something the board relation piece was something I learned in my previous district, and one of my former superintendents, Marcus Nelson, was really skilled at board relations. He had that, he was good at that.
There's some of our colleagues, some of the greatest just people leaders, and just can warm up a room.
And he would meet with them, and I learned that from him. He would meet with them one-on-one weekly, get all of that so that when we got to board meetings, it was, kind of
Yes.
smoother and all of that. And the other thing, and I did this, I've done this always with my board currently, was when we would travel together for conferences like TASB, whatever, is our job as assistant soups was to make sure that they were taken care of,
Ah,
that their sign-in was smooth, that they had everything that they needed,
gotcha.
that we had our dinners planned, and we have a couple that like to walk around the conference, the vendors, and pick up, all the things that they
Yeah.
could take home. And so and that helped build relationship. And so I learned that very early on was, you have to build relationships with them, and sometimes it takes time.
Hmm.
But when I left there before I took the superintendency, I had worked really hard at forging the relationships with those board members.
Yeah.
And so I brought that in, that was going to be my priority. Because like with principals and teachers with students, without the relationship, you're not getting very far.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so luckily for me, that's one of my strengths is relational. So, I can really tap into that. But with that also comes some of the emotion that comes with that. So you have to really get out of your head sometimes.
So in terms of finance, right? Because sometimes the perception of your community or your board or even staff is like, we don't have. I feel like we never have funds, and we're always being told no. And how do you bring them up to speed with district finances and then the overall picture for
Yeah.
Texas, funding, and to make sure that there's a good understanding of why we don't do X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. So during our district orientation with them, my CFO spent a lot of time going over, this is what you're going to see every month when I report to you, so that you can understand
Hmm.
each of the items that's being presented, and you can understand where the monies are coming from. Because one of the most, I think, difficult concepts for them to grasp is the fund balance.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, you have $35 million. We can go do all these things. No, that's not how it works, And so there's, committed and there's uncommitted. And so then this is what we're working with, and this is how you can use this. And you have to make sure you have reserve and, all the things, because of course we can afford it. We've got $35 million saved up. Well, that's not,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that when they say, like, we don't have any money, what do you mean we don't have any money? We have all this in the savings account. Yes, but you don't want to tap into that. Like, you also always want to have a healthy fund balance. So getting them to understand that. And then the opposite is also true, that they, they have an understanding of finance, and they say, no, we don't need to be doing these things because we need to be saving money. And so we need to be cutting back, and we're too top heavy, or we're too, there's always those conversations, right? And so we always have to make sure, like, what aligns with our vision and the support that we want to make sure that we continue to provide for our students, to make sure that we have equity of access. And if we start cutting teachers, and we start cutting programs, and we start cutting staff, then that becomes an imbalance in providing equity of access.
That's one of the challenges I think all districts are going through is the financial piece. Do you feel like districts leaders need to be thinking about, how do we really leverage assets? How do we start to maybe not ever turn a profit, but try to fill some of the gaps by being creative or innovative, or finding ways that our district can bring in revenue? Is that something superintendents really need to be thinking about?
I think that, more, superintendents are now very aware. So you find that we're having to, like, partner with each other so we can pool all of our resources, so that we can say, okay, well, this group of districts, we're going to have like a CTE, kind of, consortium where we're sharing
Right.
kids and teachers,
Teacher,
and
yep.
you know what I mean? But when you're in a district like mine, the nearest is an hour away, 2 hours to the valley. Like, so you can't really, so how do I get that? How do
Right.
how am I able to attack that? Right. But I think everybody is kind of aware of, we're going to have to do something, because public ed is under attack. I mean, 100% public ed is, and how we've known it is looking very quickly like it's going to be an effort to dismantle. And I think it'll break down before we were able to build it back up.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the reason, the thinking behind that from the people that the people that are in those seats, as to why they would want to go back to a system that breaks people apart and that says you're over here in the private schools and you're over here in the, you know,
Yeah, I think it's very short-sighted, right? Because we love to tout, and I'm very proud of our economy here in Texas.
mm-hmm,
And more companies are coming here, more
mm-hmm.
people are coming here, and we've got to be able to supply the workforce. And if you dismantle, your training ground, essentially, that is really going to be difficult
It is.
to sustain.
And it's difficult to recruit quality
Yep.
individuals to come in that want to come in and that want to teach, and that are invested in, this is our future.
Mhm.
It's the greatest equalizer.
Yeah.
Like we're in the civil rights issues of our times.
Yeah.
And when you've got kids, and it's not even about race anymore, it's about the haves and the have-nots. And that divide continues to get bigger and bigger. And our boards, and that's part of the work that you have to do with your boards. Like your boards need to be actively engaged in that.
Absolutely.
And being vocal around, hey, we've got to get up there. But I think one of the sad facts is, and we talked about this last night at dinner, is that teachers could change the trajectory of what happens at the state level, but they're probably the least group that votes.
I know.
And I don't understand that. I don't know how you get them to understand your voice has power over what's happening. But they don't turn out, whether it's local elections for school board or, national elections. Teacher groups have so much power to be able to change the trajectory of what's happening, because they have such strong voice, but they won't come up to it.
Yeah, I
don't
think,
understand that either.
I think some of it is I always wonder, is there conflicting political pieces in at the home, or is I don't know. I don't know if it's
I think it has to do, I don't know. I mean, if I were to guess, I would think it has more to do with confidence. Like, who am I? My vote's not going to count. Like, what does it
yeah,
matter? What does it matter? I'm right here and I'm focusing on this.
yeah.
And they may be in the classroom and giving it their all and struggling with, large class sizes and, outdated technology or whatever the issues are, that their voice could change what's happening in the classroom, but they're so busy dealing with the day in and day out. And then we're asking them to do all these other things, not just teach anymore. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a whole other topic then,
Yeah.
but it's, still related to, like, what are we going to be asking our teachers to do? Because the board is directly involved in, are you going to require teachers to be armed? Like they're barely being trained to teach.
Yeah, you're right. I laugh, but
they're coming out. You've got universities closing down their
Yeah.
programs, so you get people that are just like, well, I'm graduating with whatever, and then I'll go into teaching through an alternative program or, district of innovation or whatever it is, and then we also want them to learn how to shoot a weapon. I don't know about that.
Yeah, we were talking beforehand about hunting. I'm like, that's not. Yeah, that's not.
I mean,
It's a little
I'm
scary.
like, I live in, in an area where that's,
Well, we're in Texas, so
we
I'll
hunt
just
and
assume
all
everybody.
that, but like I wouldn't even do it. And I'm pretty, I wouldn't say, my husband would argue that I was skilled with the gun. He doesn't really want me carrying one, but, it's just a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for them, and their I guess part of their way to react is to complain to boards. But if we start just thinking about the complaint, we're not thinking about the thinking. What is it that they're really concerned about? And how do we as a district address that? Right? So if it's safety, well, then what do we do to make sure that they feel safe so that they can teach in the classroom? And you need board support for that. And everybody needs to be on the same page. It's not just about having an armed police officer on every campus. It's more than that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so.
All right. We were talking a little bit beforehand about some of the districts in your area,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to pitch something here on the show, and then you can tell me what you think about it. Right. So, I love career in tech. I love innovation. We want to help districts, find their way and really support them. and all of the things that are driving our Texas economy. What if we, and I say we, I'm just going to volunteer Power School. Sorry, Hardeep. But what if we figured out an event for not only you, but some other districts in that area, and we develop a workforce innovation type of event where kids, parents, and most importantly, all of the businesses and industry that provide the jobs come together, and we start really looking at what do kids need to be able to do when they walk out of the door, whether they go to college or they don't. How do we best equip them? And then how does industry help districts do that, either with their time, financially, their internships, and we make it just a huge event where we show the power of public education.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Anytime that you can bring the stakeholders to the same table.
Yep.
I mean, what a powerful way to get the message out that whatever you're doing up there or here in Austin, whatever you're doing up there, we're banding together because we know that education is the greatest equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
It will help break the generational poverty. And we have to be able to provide hope for those kids that don't feel like there's hope.
That's
Because
right.
we've got a lot of them sitting in our classrooms that don't think that there's hope. And then with all of the other stuff circling around, that's a whole other podcast
Yes.
around immigration and,
Yeah.
what we're going to have to deal with in terms of that. There's uncertainty
Sure.
in our communities. And whether you're talking about a small community like mine where we're kind of isolated and I'm wanting to provide because I know that there's opportunities out there.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to find a way to get them what they need to be able to get there.
Well,
the next step.
I'm hoping that we make this happen. We bring some of those opportunities to the kids, to the parents, to the district.
And I think there's people out there. There's people out there right now that are retired. They quit working early on because they could, and they're sitting at home bored, wondering what can I do. You can come and teach.
Yeah.
If you're a welder, you can come and teach
You can
welding
get a job
to
tomorrow.
kids.
Yes.
And if you are, auto mechanics, auto techs, there's people that we need teachers that can come in and teach skills to our kids. And what better way to give back to your community and get a reward? It's rewarding to be able to do that. But until people start saying, forget about the what's the teacher pay, and that's a whole other problem. But just like if you want to give back to your community,
Mm-hmm.
get into a public school and help. You're going to deal with these kids either way.
Right.
You're either going to help
on the front end, or you're going to deal with them on the back.
So, we either build our workforce or we support them when they're not working.
I want to end on this note. I'm going to put you on the spot. In 2025, Zapata County will be what?
We will thrive. We are going to thrive this year. The team that I have working with me and with our kids they are passionate and they are invested, and not only in our kids but in our community. And I just am so confident that change happens 3 to 5. We're in year 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm expecting that we're going to start to catapult
Excellent.
forward, and we'll be a district to be looking at.
You heard it here first on the path forward.
Yeah.
Be on the lookout 2025 for Zapata County ISD. And if you like what you heard, please hit the like button, the bell, the drill. And please comment if anything strikes you. We love comments and feedback. And I want to thank Bobbie for joining me once again.
Thank you. I love it.
And we'll be seeing you in the relatively near future because we're going to make something happen.
Yeah. Talos 956.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Take care.